Oh, guys, my mic was muted. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your patience. I have what I think is an exclusive story to offer you this morning. And we will, I promise, get to Kamala Harris's impressive speech at a rally yesterday about policy, about bringing prices down by cracking down on the corporate price gougers. We will get to that. And I personally find that absolutely thrilling. But before we get to that sort of top story, I want to tell you about this exclusive, something I have noticed I don't think anyone else has before, related to the attempt to falsely accuse the new vice presidential ticket candidate for Harris. They are trying to smear him. And by they, I mean MAGA and the Republicans are trying to smear Tim Walz, who has a beautiful record of public service, from public school teacher to member of Congress to, and at the same time, serving in the Army National Guard. They are trying to smear him with a claim of false valor. And it's not going to stick. And so I want to tell you there's some stuff about this that you may already know, but I need to provide it for you to give you the full context. So when I do the big reveal, you're going to be like, I don't want to oversell it, but trust me, it's a lot of, as they used to say, rat fuckery, right? That's what's going on here. And when you hear it, you won't be able to forget it. So with that, let me begin by what's happening. And you saw it. You saw it yesterday when Vance, JD Vance, which is I guess the name he goes by now, when JD Vance was at his kind of pathetically small, you could call it a rally, in front of what looked to be like the police station in Shelby County, Michigan. And you know, I live in Michigan and I grew up here. My father's doctor's office was in Shelby County, Michigan. And this is a large area. Shelby County has, I don't even know, hundreds of thousands of people. And they decided to hold this rally in front of a police station. And I want to show you, I actually want to show you the sad size of the rally that he was using to try to smear Tim Walz. Okay, let me show you this because you won't believe this crowd. And I know you might be thinking, if it's a small rally, why am I giving this attention? Because this is the number one thing they're going to try to do to bring down Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. And it ain't going to work. Okay, let me show you this.
Who were just enjoying their day here in Shelby Township, and you had an illegal alien plow into them and kill this innocent mother and daughter.
Okay, he's talking about trying to blame all immigrants who come into this country undocumented, and he's trying to get the crowd riled up about that. And you can see they are less interested. They are less interested than this than would be a babysitter watching the kid, some kid's soccer game when it is going on and on and on, and no one has scored. That is not an interesting moment. And so let me give you the context of what. I'm going to give you the close-up. You can see what he said when the camera was close, tight in on him, not showing the crowd. Okay, I'm going to show you what he was saying about Tim Walz. But before I show you that, I just want to give you a little context. As you know, Tim Walz, when he was around 17 years old, signed up when he was living in Nebraska for the Army National Guard. When he moved over into Minnesota, he continued doing that for 24 years. And he, as I recall, it was in 2005 when he decided to run for Congress. He was very unhappy with the Iraq War and how veterans were being treated, as well as how people on the ground were being treated, and wanted us to get out of that war, right? This is the same war that George W. Bush had already said, mission accomplished, but it wasn't flipping accomplished. So he wanted to leave to run for Congress. And he did that, and about 2 months later, his National Guard unit was given notice that they were going to be called into active duty. And then a few months after that, they actually went to Iraq. And so the allegation here is that he abandoned his unit. Okay. That is not what happened here. And in fact, he fought for them when he was in Congress. And so anyhow, let me show you what Vance said. We'll talk on the other side. Remember, this is J.D. Vance at that teeny tiny rally in front of a police station in Shelby County, a giant county in Michigan. And this was the sad gathering. But when the camera comes up close with him with flags around him, you don't necessarily know what's going on. Let's play that.
Well, I wonder, Tim Walz, when were you ever in war? What was this weapon that you carried into war, given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq, and he has not spent a day in a combat zone? What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not. And if he wants to criticize me for getting an Ivy League education, I'm proud of the fact that my mamaw supported me, that I was able to make something of myself. I'd be ashamed if I was him and I lied about my military service like he did.
Okay, so much to unpack there, right? He's trying to dodge a couple of different things. First, he's saying that Tim Walz is pretending to be something that he isn't, and that he's engaging in some stolen valor. No, he was in the Army National Guard. I think I always forget the name of this ranking. Maybe someone in the chat can tell me. What his actual ranking is. And yes, I do see you, Rosanna, with your comment. I'm going to get to what you said about what J.D. Vance actually did. But first, tell me, I think it was some kind of major sergeant, but someone will tell me in the chat. At any rate, he has a very high rank because of his 20 years service, Sergeant Major. Thank you, Jeffrey. He has this rank of Sergeant Major, and he retired with that rank, but technically speaking, even though he achieved that rank because he retired in order to join, to run for Congress, he hadn't gone to one last training, and so technically speaking, he doesn't officially have that title. But he was training folks. He was out there training people who went to serve our country in Iraq. That's what he did for his unit, and he motivated them, and he unfortunately had to leave a couple months before they were called into duty. And he did great things for them and for veterans when he was serving in Congress. And just to be clear about this, I think anyone who serves deserves our thanks. And during wartime, if you are serving and you are not sent overseas, you are still a veteran. My father served during Vietnam, and he was stationed at a Navy base in Long Beach as a doctor, and he took care of people there. And there were doctors who were sent over into the combat zone. But that didn't happen to my father, but he did his service, and I am proud of him. And I'm going to get a little emotional here, but when he died in December, he had a military funeral, and they laid an American flag across his coffin, and that meant something to our family. And so how dare J.D. Vance act as if this man who served 24 years training people, he was not sent into the combat zone. That is not stolen valor. That is valor. And secondly, and again, I don't want to question anyone's military service. J.D. Vance, yes, he did, after high school and before he went to Ohio State, he did sign up and he was in the military. And I think it was the Marines. You can correct me if I'm wrong on this. And he was sent into Iraq. And his job in Iraq was not to be in combat. He worked, he was a writer. I think he wrote, and this is what my friend was telling me, and I wanted to get back to her. I think it was Roseanne, that he was writing. Roseanne, pop back in there and tell me his exact job. But he was there doing written work and thank you guys. I didn't want to bring up that, but it's true. And it's on my mind when I hear these claims of stolen valor. They're false. And J.D. Vance didn't hold a weapon. He didn't get hit by an IED. That's okay. He went over and served. And so it's shameful. And I hope that Tim Walz doesn't engage in this. Both of these men served, and both of these men deserve, saying thank you for our service. But I find it disgraceful that JD Vance is doing that. And I'm not the only one disgraceful. And by the way, I'm getting to the big reveal. I know you've heard all of this. And for folks who joined the show a bit after the beginning, I've just set up the way they're trying to, the MAGA and the Republicans and Donald Trump and his surrogate and VP running mate, JD Vance, are trying to smear Harris and Walz by claiming that Walz is a phony and that he doesn't deserve to say that he served in the military, right? This is their main line of attack. And I'm going to do a reveal here about something here. Now, but I want to make sure you know all the facts that are on the ground, so to speak. The person who is leading this effort at the moment is Chris LaCivita. He is still Donald Trump's campaign manager. And Chris LaCivita was involved as one of the people, an outside consultant involved in the so-called Swiftboating of John Kerry in 2004. And I know some of you folks remember that. Others don't. I kind of did, and I wanted to, for this show, revisit those details. And so when I decided, not decided, but when I inadvertently woke up at 2 a.m., I thought this would be a good time not to sleep instead of getting up at 6. And why don't I just focus on this? And while I was digging in to refresh my memory about what happened to John Kerry in 2004 when they accused him of stolen valor, I found something out. Now, before I get to that thing that I found out, I want to remind you a bit about what happened to John Kerry. Now, before I do that, though, I want to show you on Fox News what Jessica Tarlov, the, I guess, token liberal they have on the show, had to say about how disgraceful it is and how wrong it is to try to smear Tim Walz. Let me play you that, and then I'll talk to you about the Swiftboating and get to our big reveal, our exclusive, I believe.
Go stolen valor first.
Yes.
So obviously this was going to come up because the Trump campaign manager was the one behind the John Kerry Swiftboat attack, which was obviously very persuasive to people. He served for 24 years honorably. Then he stopped to run for Congress on a platform of ending the war. And I don't think that anyone, especially with Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, did he dodge the draft 4 or 5 times? Bone spurs, Captain Bone Spurs? What say you, Judge?
Bone spurs are a very serious issue, Jessica.
I can tell by the way
Bone
you
Spur
said
Association.
that you know that
Send
it's
your
not
letters.
serious.
Yeah, but you know what?
So you saw that. A couple things. She's on to Chris LaCivita that he's tried this before. And Jessica's drawing a contrast between Team Bone Spurs. Donald Trump, and we know it's documented, that his father, Frederick Trump, saved him from serving, from having to be drafted in case his number came up during Vietnam by getting some doctor to pretend that Donald Trump had something wrong with his feet, bone spurs. No one ever saw him walk funny. This was a complete fabrication. So he could dodge the draft. That's one thing. And also what I find really interesting is Gilbert Gottfried, who is in the tank for Donald Trump, was mocking him about the bone spurs. So it takes a lot of chutzpah, as we would say in my family, for JD Vance, who is on the ticket with the draft dodger and big coward and weirdo Donald Trump, would start to challenge the service performed by Tim Walz. Okay, so that is a lot of chutzpah. Okay, so now, let me talk to you about the Swiftboaters, because this is something that you might remember, as I said, and it's essential for me to lay this out so you can see something that I found incredibly surprising to learn. And it is as follows. So back in 2004, John Kerry, who was running on the Democratic ticket against George W. Bush, who had already been in office for 4 years, there was a campaign, not coordinated definitely by George W. Bush, but a lot of his Republican friends. And what they were doing there was that they had assembled a group that appeared to be just veterans who had been in Swiftboats. And so what a Swiftboat is some of the boats that they traveled on in Vietnam, and John Kerry had been on one of them. And there had been some kind of battle during Vietnam, and John Kerry had received some medals. What had also happened, though, is when he got home from Vietnam, Kerry became a big anti-war veteran, which was common. I mean, it was the veterans that helped lead the Vietnam anti-war movement that ultimately eventually end that war and end U.S. policy. And it took, obviously, quite a long time. And so the campaign in 2004 against Kerry was two-part. One, they found people who had been in Swiftboats themselves or had apparently said they were with him, and they questioned whether he even deserved the medals in the first place. And also they condemned him because apparently at one point he had either thrown these medals aside and he had denounced the war, saying that, therefore accusing him of stolen valor. And there were other issues in 2004 around the campaign, but this really, really hurt John Kerry. And back then, Democrats didn't know how to fight back. And I think that there wasn't enough of an orchestrated response to that. That's one thing. Okay. So as I noticed, now I'm getting into the part that I think is exclusive. So at 2 a.m, the reason why I was interested in this is because I had heard that that Chris LaCivita, the head of the campaign right now for Donald Trump, had been involved in Swiftboating. So he was trying out, he had the same old template and he was going to try this thing out on Tim Walz. And so, my deal is money. I believe in following the money because that tells you a lot about who is behind something. And I don't just like to follow big dirty money. I'm interested in markets and I'm just interested in where the money comes from. Because there's this expression, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Piper playing the music. I know it's an old corny expression, but that's what I'm about. I was born with my brain filled with old corny expressions. So if you take this idea that he who pays the piper calls the tune, I wanted to know who was funding the Swiftboaters for Truth. And the biggest donors were people close to the Republican Party. And guess who one of the major donors is? It was Crow Holdings. Crow Holdings, I said to myself at 2 a.m. in my brain that was way too awake for 2 a.m. Crow, could that be Harlan Crow? What do you know, friends? Harlan Crow's business, Crow Holdings, gave $100,000 to the Swiftboaters campaign. Harlan flippin' Crow. Guys, this man has been a puppeteer for years. It's like he thinks that democracy should be his own chessboard where he can move the pieces around. And I know, guys, this isn't the moment where I start launching into how corrupt Clarence Thomas is, right? But I just want to make clear to you that I'm going to now start, pulling the threads here about Harlan Crow. And I know ProPublica, I know other people have done this, but as far as about Harlan Crow generally, but as far as I know today here exclusively on Morning Jen, I might be the first person who has drawn a connection between Harlan Crow and Swiftboaters during this election cycle. Okay, you're welcome. Again, this is just the beginning of that investigation. Okay, now I want to pivot from this to what our top story here is a message. Because remember, what Nancy Pelosi said about a campaign is you need the 3 M's. You need mobilization to win, you need messaging to win, and of course you need money to win. And right now, I believe the Harris-Walz campaign has the advantage, right? But this is what I was just talking about with you in the first segment was messaging. They are trying to break down her messaging. And so I believe all of us who know the truth need to show that this smear campaign is disgraceful and that it's not going to work and that Team Bone Spurs has a lot of chutzpah trying this shit out on us. Okay, but what about mobilization? Mobilization, there is no question that the crowd size speaks for itself and is probably echoing in Donald Trump's nearly empty brain because nothing is more important to him than crowd size. For whatever reason, he equates that with his own sense of well-being, stature, and power. Remember, this is the dude who had Sean Spicer his then chief of staff, one of many, lie about the crowd size at the inauguration. So I want to show you. I'm going to show you mobilization, and then I'm going to get to the message. So no mobilization can be best shown not just by showing you what happened at the two rallies yesterday. One was in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and the other was at a hangar at the airport, Detroit Metro Airport in Michigan. And so I just love this, and I'm going to show you, this was a crowd waiting for Harris to come out in Wisconsin, and they are chanting. I'll talk to you about this on the other side. It's going to be self-evident what they are saying.
Democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Yes, one of my favorite chants. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Having been in crowds, having been one of the organizers of the tax march back in 2017, this is an easy go-to, and it definitely makes us feel good. Because when you're in a crowd of people assembling peacefully and joyfully, it feels like democracy. It feels like power of the people. It feels like government for, and by the people. Nothing feels better, especially in a world where people want to take our freedom away. We're always in danger of crazy people who shouldn't have power trying to gain power. Okay. So that was the Waukesha, Wisconsin rally. And I think I already showed you what happened in Sterling, I was going to say Sterling's Heights, Shelby Township, Michigan. But someone else created a fabulous comparison of a, a do-si-do or split screen of comparing the two rallies. I'm going to play this for you.
Democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
That's right, O'Brien.
And daughter who were just enjoying their day here in Shelby Township, and you had an illegal alien plow into them and kill this innocent mother.
Okay, so you can see the comparison. And folks, I do read the chat. And yes, I'm not going to jump ahead, but I am going to get to, my next story is going to be a little bit more about them being in the same area. So you can kind of see the energy, the mobilization. And you might say to yourself, wait a second. Yes, I was showing you one was a rally in Wisconsin. And the other was in Michigan. But remember that Harris and Walz had put out their schedule that they were going to, I think Tuesday was, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and that yesterday they were going to be in Wisconsin and Michigan. So, of course, J.D. Vance was, like a little dog at her heels trying to do the counter programming by being in the same cities and trying to steal a little bit of the news cycle from her. And I'm going to get to what happened when he did that. But first, I want to show you, yesterday's, but what I want to show you, which I didn't yesterday, is what happens when you have a really bad advance team. So when Kamala Harris and Tim Walz had that kind of like, I don't know, it was spectacular. It felt like fireworks when they announced, when they joined and launched their tour together for the first time in Philly. That same day, Vance had terrible advance people, bad Vance instead of advance, I don't know. And I'm going to show you what that looked like. Okay, this is J.D. Vance in Philadelphia, and it flippin' looks like he was campaigning for Kamala Harris. Look at this. This is in Philadelphia, and J.D. Vance is standing in front of a sign that says Kamala. Well, I can't even really read what it says below, but apparently it says chaos. So the message, again, this is, you have to have mobilization, messaging, and money. His messaging here is, I'm supporting Kamala, because whoever made this sign didn't think that when they wanted to have it say Kamala Chaos, that maybe he shouldn't be standing in front of it. And friends, things went downhill from there. You saw how bad how small his crowd was in Michigan. But I want to show you what went down. I'm going to show you what went down when he tried to confront Kamala Harris on the tarmac in Wisconsin. She was on her way, I think she was on her way to her rally, and she had just met with some young people on the tarmac. And she flies in Air Force Two because that is a plane she should. And what does he do instead? He brings his Trump plane and he lands and he decides to be some sort of big man on campus. And his plan was to walk over to her and confront her. But he even flubbed that. Let me show you that and we'll talk about it. So you can see her. Oh, that's not her. I'm sorry. That's the Secret Service. You can see J.D. Vance trying to act like the big guy. Right there he is, walking over.
I figured I'd come by and one, just get a good look at the plane. Hopefully it's going to be my plane in a few months. But I also thought you guys might get lonely because the vice president doesn't answer questions from reporters and hasn't for 17 days. Have they given you guys an explanation for why she won't take questions from reporters? No? Nobody? Okay, great. Well, I hope that she changes her mind because it'd be good for the American people, and I think it'd be good for you all if she actually ran a real campaign instead of one from a basement with the teleprompters.
Okay, I don't know if you could hear that, but it was a little bit quiet and ineffective, kind of like his effort there. What he did, as opposed to what he tried to do, is he was hoping to go over and talk to her or confront her. So instead, he ends up walking over. She's not there. She's already gone off in her motorcade to do what she needs to do. And so he sees the press who is there near the plane. And remember, Kamala and all the other campaigners, Kamala and Walz, and I would say Vance, because Donald Trump hasn't been on a campaign in days, a campaign rally. He's a little bit too tired, too old, and too crazy to get out there. So he's sending Vance instead for him. At any rate, they travel with press. They're sitting with her on planes. He walks over to the press and says, "Oh, you might be lonely. Isn't it terrible that Kamala Harris refuses to talk to the press?" And he actually says, and she's running a campaign from her basement. Excuse me. Did that crowd look like her flippin' basement? I don't think she's been in a basement. So that doesn't even ring true. It rings pathetic. And then he also says, I came over here to talk to you guys because you might be lonely and because she's not talking to you. I think they know that she's talking to them on the plane. And then also, on top of it, he says, this is going to be my plane one day. What the fuck is this? What is this? Second grade? It's insane. And this is what he is trying to do. Also, and I don't have this clip, I want to talk to you again about how bad his messaging is here, which is he was, I think it might have been at the Shelby Township event when he was asked questions. And someone said to him, people say you're angry or, what makes you happy? And this was the incredible opening. I forgot who said this. A friend of mine said this on Twitter, and I wish I could give her credit. But maybe I will tomorrow when I remember. But I saw her say, this would have been the moment for J.D. Vance to say something like, my family makes me happy. Right? This is the guy who thinks that everyone should have children. This is the guy who the other day was boasting about how he told his son to shut the hell up about Pokemon when Donald Trump called him. And that kind of got a lot of pushback, right? So this would have been the moment where J.D. Vance could say, my family makes me happy. My wife and my community make me happy, right? Anything. Instead, his response was not to respond on his feet, but to say something about, or what gives him joy. He clapped back at the reporters saying, something about their crazy questions, and then turned to what made him angry. And I'm wondering if someone trained J.D. Vance to say, never answer a question on the fly, always attack the reporter first. I don't know. It was a big, big flub up. Okay, so I got to why his message is bad and pathetic, and why his positioning and his mobilization is quite sad. Now I want to talk to you, though, about Harris's messaging. And I want to play for you something that I find to be there are, I think, two number one issues for people in this country. I think the first is the economy, because that covers everything. And I do believe that reproductive freedom, the choice to decide if, when, and how to have a family, is absolutely an economic issue. I consider that and Roe v. Wade to be part of that, but also a part of a bigger issue. So I think those two things together, like freedom to make choices about your own life, as well as economic, the trouble with with both wages and prices and fear about the economy, even though it's very strong right now, is a real thing. It's a real thing for people because even if overall wages have surpassed inflation, that, overall statistics don't deal with everybody in the country. You and I or someone else might feel like they're better off, but we sense when others aren't. And we also know from the research of the Groundwork Collective that we know that it is a lot of price gouging, as well as in some cases price fixing examples like the tuna fish industry who's been caught doing that, where that's why prices are too high, where businesses are taking advantage or took advantage of the pandemic to gouge us. And so here's what Harris had to say about the economy. And this was, I think, in Wisconsin as well. Yeah.
Because while our economy is doing well by many measures, prices for everyday things like groceries are still too high. You know it and I know it. When I was Attorney General, I went after price-fixing schemes. And when I am president, it will be a day one priority to fight to bring down prices. I will take on big corporations that engage in illegal price gouging. I will take on corporate landlords that unfairly raise rents on working families. I will take on big pharma and cap the cost of prescription drugs for all Americans and continue to bring manufacturing jobs back to America and back to communities like Eau Claire.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that message, and it resonates. I want to talk to you also before we wind up and do Crazy Town, which is this. Harris also knows how to handle hecklers, and she also knows how to negotiate with folks who might not be happy with her. So in Michigan, in Detroit, at that hangar at the airport, before she gave her talk, she did meet with members of the Muslim community in Detroit, including leaders, I think it was including the mayor of Dearborn and others, to talk about ceasefire and to address those issues. But of course, we live in a free country, and there were some people who were protesting and shouting at the rally. And at first she said, hey guys, I believe in freedom of speech, and but now it's but I'm talking now. And it went on for a tiny bit. And so she finally did this to shut it down. And I think this makes tons of sense. Let's play it.
Intends to surrender our fight against the climate crisis, and he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that. Otherwise, I'm speaking.
I think that was perfect. There's some people who didn't appreciate it, but the vast majority of people that I know, including folks who are calling for a ceasefire, who are very concerned about not just Netanyahu, but what's happening in the Israeli government right now, and desperately want this war to end and the hostages to come home and Gaza to be rebuilt, understand that that doesn't help. Now, of course, freedom of speech, but at some point, people came to hear her at the rally with her positions, and that was a time for her to say that. Now, as we wrap up, it is absolutely time for Crazy Town, and I want to let you know that a bit of Crazy Town, because it's so darn crazy, is something we already saw, but trust me, there's an extra little crazy piece to it. Let's do this. Damn, I love that music. Okay, for Crazy Town, I have today the craziest of crazy, the idea that Donald Trump thinks he can rerun his 2016 campaign, that he thinks he can rerun his failed 2020 campaign, that he thinks he can rerun like whatever John Kerry did in what they did to John Kerry in 2004, that he can just phone it in and talk about like electric battery boats and sharks and ignore the terrible economy we had under him and ignore how much people actually detest him and find him disgusting and weird and tired and are just bored of it all and want unity in this country. And so I'm going to show you for Crazy Town again. This is, and I jumped ahead because people wanted to see this. Crazy Town is this attempt at what J.D. Vance tried to do here to stalk Kamala Harris. He's got the wrong gal. This is not 2016 anymore. Let's look at this. Remember this.
One, just get a good look at the plane. Hopefully it's going to be my plane in a few months, but I also thought you guys might get lonely.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to be your plane in a few months. No, dude, it's never going to be your plane. That's a fact. We are going to work so hard to make sure that you never get in that plane ever and that you don't try to use this stocky He-Man approach. And what this, I got one thing after Crazy Town, something really important about Tim Walz. So I'm going to add that after this. But what I want to tell you is how much this actually replicates what Donald Trump tried to do. So again, here is part of Crazy Town. I think you remember this. Let me tell you something. I know you remember that. And I felt like Hillary Clinton was in a bind, that she was going to pretend he wasn't there because the people had so many issues with her that she didn't turn around. She felt like she was in a box. I don't know. But let me flip and tell you, if Kamala Harris is on stage with Donald Trump on September 10th, unless he's afraid and doesn't show up, there's no flipping way that woman is going to let him stalk her. She will turn her ass around and say, "This is my time to talk. Get over back to your lectern." And that is absolutely what we always need to do. And I think Democrats don't call people out on that. Now, sorry, I've got a postscript, a post-Crazy Town thing to say, which is this. Donald Trump is effing up with his lies because we have the receipts, right? Donald Trump tried to tell people yesterday morning on Fox News and is trying to say that he's never liked Tim Walz. And the other thing they're trying to smear Tim Walz with is the fact that after people justifiably protested, and I was one of them, after the killing, the murder of George Floyd by Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis, and there were protests in 2020. There was, as I mentioned yesterday, a counter-protester, a right-wing boogaloo boy person, and that's this whole crazy racist group, who set fire to a police station. So there were outside agitators. There were people who were trying to stir up violence. And there were problems in Minneapolis. And so being, with his history of being part of the National Guard, he wanted to call them in. And actually, Donald Trump we have him on tape, audio tape right here, with a sort of a picture of him, so it's not boring to listen to. I can play for you what he had to say about Tim Walz. I'd like you to listen to that, and then we will talk on the other side and close things down, and you can get on with your day.
And we spoke, and I fully agree with the way he handled it the last couple of days. I asked him to do that, and the whole world was laughing. 3 days later, I spoke to the governor. The governor's, I think, on the call, and he's an excellent guy. You've got a big National Guard out there that's ready to come in and fight like hell. I tell you, what they did in Minneapolis was incredible.
Okay. Now, I don't agree with everything Donald Trump said there. The National Guard shouldn't have been there to fight like the hell. They should be there to restore order. But the point is, he said he was an excellent guy. He said Minneapolis was a model. Those are his words. Those are campaign words. That is on message for Harris Walz. And so thank you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Super, super happy about your return. Now, one thing, as you've noticed, I am still part of the Mary Trump Media Network, But we are effective Monday, so tomorrow's the last day that we are multi-streaming. Right now, you might be watching me on Mary Truck Media YouTube, and at the same time on Jen Taub YouTube. But on Monday, you're gonna have to, make a choice. If you want to see the show, please subscribe for free to my YouTube channel. That's where you will find me, effective on Monday. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I will see you, given that today is Thursday, at Nerds at Noon. Have a great morning.